Hello and welcome to Unfold. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about the expanding bilateral relationship between Russia and India as President Vladimir Putin undertook a two-day official visit to India. High-level engagements happened and there were a number of pledges between the two countries made during this particular high-level engagement of Russian President Vladimir Putin in India. What is going to be the message that has already been delivered to the wider world, especially when we talk about the Western world, amid the intensifying pressure from the United States of America on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. Also, when we talk about the recent deterioration of relationship between India and the United States of America, also the kind of defense cooperation between the two countries, the history of which, as we have also known for a fact that Pakistan inflicted a crushing defeat on India in May this year as well. In the second segment of today's show, we are going to talk about the deadline approaching for the social media giants for a complete ban and the blockage of those users in Australia which are under 16 years of age. We are going to talk about the implications of this particular ban by the Australian authorities when it comes to the use of social media platforms and applications for the teenagers under the age of 16 years. Starting with the first segment of the show, Russian President Vladimir Putin undertook a two-day official visit to India. High-level engagements with the top leadership, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, happened over there. A lot of pledges have been made during this particular high-level engagement between the two countries. We have also known for a fact there is an increasing pressure from the Western countries, especially the US, when it comes to Russia vis-a-vis ending the conflict in Ukraine is concerned. Also, we have seen the deterioration of the bilateral relationship between India and the United States of America with the imposition of the tariffs on Indian goods that are to be exported in the United States of America, with President Donald Trump accusing India of purchasing Russian oil, which is fueling the war in Ukraine. During this particular high-level interaction between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, both have pledged to expand their bilateral relationship to newer heights. And also, Prime Minister Modi has termed this particular relationship steadfast as a pole star. Also, President Putin praising Prime Minister Narendra Modi for resisting the external pressure. At the same time, President Vladimir Putin has said Russia is ready for uninterrupted shipments of fuel to India. Now, this particular issue has been a contentious issue between India and the United States of America. What are going to be the implications if this particular supply of oil from Russia to India continues amid those sanctions by the United States of America on those Russian companies which had been exporting oil to India on discounted rates? Also, those Indian goods which have been imposed with tariffs of around 50% by the United States of America. At the same time, during this particular visit, President Putin said US continues to purchase Russian nuclear fuel. Why shouldn't India have the same privilege? Also, regarding the conflict in Ukraine, there was an expectation on the part of the Western countries that India would persuade Russian president to end what the Russians call as a special military operation in Ukraine. But what the statement tells, there hasn't been such type of move on the part of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Rather, he has said that India has stood for peace since the beginning. Also, the two countries have pledged to enhance their bilateral trade volume up to $100 billion by year 2030. All these important developments are for discussion in this particular first segment of the show. For that, we are honored to be joined through the video link by Mr. SHAHID MD KIANI, his former ambassador. Mr. KIANI, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Unfold tonight. We really appreciate that. Also, through the video link, we are honored to be joined by Dr. CHEEMA. He's a security analyst. Dr. CHEEMA, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on Unfold tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. KIANI, now this particular visit by President Vladimir Putin to India, high-level engagements happened. A lot of pledges have also been made. What sort of a signal is this particular engagement given at a time which is very critical, not only for Russia, but also India when it comes to their relationship with the West overall and with the US in particular? What sort of a message is being delivered with this particular engagement between India and Russia to the Western countries in particular?
Mr. Taimi, first of all, I can't hear you. Your voice is not very clear at all. I can't understand your question. My apologies for that. But if you can hear me if you can understand what I'm saying,
Can you hear me now clearly?
yeah, now I can hear you a little better. But what I've understood is meaning is for the interruption. There's a lot of interruption in it, and the voice had at times faded away. But nevertheless, I understand if you want my opinion on President Putin visit to India and his meetings with Prime Minister Modi. What what I gather from what I have read and what I've heard is that this visit, for whatever reasons, is important for both the countries. And I'll just take you a little to give you a background. You know, in the right at the independence, uh, Prime Minister Nehru, who was a very wise leader of India and a stalwart of the Indian independence movement, along with Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Mahatma Gandhi. He was a left-leaning politician, and he understood the tyranny of geography and the importance of geopolitical location. So he chose this superpower. And the Second World War, there were two superpowers, the Soviet Union and United States. He chose this one because we're closer to India geographically as compared to United States, which was 8,000 miles away. And they work together. They have been together for the last 75 years. The the relationship between India and that when it was in Soviet Union is very different. It's not that, but these two countries have been together for a very long time. And now at this time, when the visit was taking place, Prime Minister Modi's image itself, because after the post Pahalgam, India's image in general, and Prime Minister Modi's image in particular was damaged because of that 4 days conflict in which the battle of narratives, India's narrative was not accepted and our narrative was accepted. And India, in the 4 days conflict, lost that conflict and was not willing till today to accept it. But nevertheless, at this time, the President Putin himself is embroiled in that Ukraine war, and Prime Minister Modi himself is struggling within his own party and the image of the country. It has distanced itself. President Trump has distanced himself from Prime Minister Modi and India. So these two country leaders need each other at this time. They met. But if you look at what happened, the outcome of it, I think, except for reinforcing the relationship between India and Russia, which remains very important and significant in their foreign policy, nothing tangible came out of the visit. Meaning, and in terms of defense relationship, in defense of trade, nothing concrete was signed, nothing concrete was signed. Even when President Putin said that we are going to continue with the oil shipment, Prime Minister Modi did not say anything about it because Prime Minister Modi understands that this oil shipment, which is being sent through these the oil tankers of Malta and Greece, they may be stopped. So he didn't say anything. What has happened is that both the countries reinforce their 7.5 decades of relationship, and that's it. For them, this is this is this is something for which they take pride, and they wanted to show that they have not come under the United States pressure or the pressure of any other country. So this is what has happened. But they have been people were looking at their defense agreement
Ambassador
would have
KIANI,
been
I seek your pardon for the interruption. Let me include Dr. CHEEMA into the discussion also. And in the meanwhile, our team will continue to correct if there are any issues with the audio so that we can have this particular conversation in a smooth way. Dr. CHEEMA, as per your understanding, had there been any sort of tangible outcomes out of this particular visit by President Vladimir Putin to India, as Mr. Ambassador KIANI is of the view there hasn't been any tangible outcome from this particular visit except that there has been a reinforcement from both the sides to expand and strengthen this particular bilateral relationship?
Well, well, frankly speaking, the both countries have a bilateral trade of about $68 billion, where there is a huge surplus in favor of trade surpluses in favor of Russia. But I think, as per this visit, there were certain rumors that came from the Indian media that they are going to have more S-400 or the Su-57. But the Indian Defense Secretary made it very clear we are not going to do this because the Indians do fear that they can come under the American sanctions. And for instance, if you remember, the Americans gave a special waiver to India on S-400 because it could come under the CARTS Act, which means that any American ally which buys military hardware from an American adversary can come under those sanctions. The way Turkey couldn't buy those S-400. So that is one thing. Secondly, I think this India and Russia, they have had a high-profile economic roadmap to expand the bilateral trade. So what they are doing is they are considering that this BrahMos project is a template, and what we need to do is that we need to enhance this defense narrative, where they want joint research and joint development in defense production. And India has been asking for quite a long time that they want Make in India. They call it in the Hindi language as Atmanirbhar Bharat. So India stands for Make in India. The Russians are going to transfer the technology to India. This is what I think the Americans don't want. So this defense technology transfer is an Indian dream for which they have been working for quite a long time. And as per some of the reports, every Russian military hardware will come with a defense transfer of technology. So that is something which Indians are looking. But at the same time, um, they're looking to expand the trade to $100 billion, and for that matter, much of the Indian industry will go to Russia, and for that matter, even is the pharma industry or any other kind of industry. And particularly, the most important thing for the Indians is looking at the size of Indian population and looking at how many Russians have been killed this in India, Ukraine.
Right. I think there's a little bit of distortion. I will try to reconnect with you, Dr. Kamachima. This is a very important point when it comes to India's desire of that transfer of defense technology from Russia to India, also getting that support to which there's been a meeting between the defense minister of both the countries. Also, there was a joint statement after that particular meeting where the Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said that India looked to further the Indian government aims to build capacity in its indigenous defense industry. Also, the Russian defense minister had emphasized at the same time in that particular statement, the Russian defense industry is ready to support India towards becoming self-reliant in the field of defense production. We are once again reconnected to Dr. Kamachima. Dr. Kamachima, before going into that particular dimension of when they have pledged to enhance their bilateral volume up to $100 billion by year 2030, let's specifically talk about this particular desire, as you already talked about, that India being keen in getting the defense technology transfer from Russia. Of course, you already mentioned that Americans won't want it, but the Russian defense minister has said after that meeting with the Indian defense minister that the Russian defense industry is ready to support India towards becoming self-reliant in the field of defense production. By looking at this particular statement, and also that kind of history both the countries have got when it comes to defense cooperation, what does that mean for the region overall, and how should Pakistan be looking at this particular engagement between the two?
I think when the Indian Defense Ministry talks of having a military hardware from Russia, they're just playing through the gallery. They are not getting it in reality. The Indians do fear of the American sanctions. Indians do fear that the supply from other Western countries can stop. And at the same time, the Indians believe that we need to diversify their supply chain of defense military hardware. And for that matter, for quite some time, they're not buying any kind of a military hardware from Russia. Although much of the India's defense equipment is of Cold War era, and that is particularly from the Russia. So they went to United States, they went to France, they went to Israel, and many other countries to get the military hardware, but they are not getting it from the Russia. So the bargain which they are doing with the Russia is in fact to convince the Americans to come and give us the technology and give us the military hardware. So the problem with the Americans is that they don't trust anymore with the Indians. So they are not providing them with a high profile military hardware, particularly F-35. They have not asked them openly; they can get it. So I think whatever the deals which India is doing, or whatever the talk is going on with India and Russia, that is just to convince the Western players that we are ready to buy your military hardware. So give us with the technology transfer. And they believe they can even, there is a pressure from within the Indian armed forces that you need to have such kind of a military procurement very soon. But unfortunately, there's a lot of red tapeism or whatever. There's a lot of issues in the decision making, so they have not been able to get that kind of military hardware. So when they talk to the Russians for this military hardware, in fact, they're encouraging other players to come and have talks with us to give us the military hardware and also have the technology transfer. For us in Pakistan, I think we must not be worried. Our military hardware is capable enough to deal with the Indians. Our 4.5 generation fighter jets, we have sufficient capability to deal with the Indian Air Force. And for your information and for the information of your viewers, I think India needs 60 squadrons at the moment. For the Air Force, and they just have 30 squadrons, and so they have really shortage of their Air Force, and for that matter, that's what the Indian Air Force calls for insurgency to the Indian political class. That if you want to pick calls with Pakistan and China, then you need to give sufficient military hardware to the Indian Air Force. So the talks with India and Russia, they are not going to be concrete talks. I don't find that India will go for further military hardware because they want to rely more on their own military hardware. For example, where they have signed a deal with the Americans again, where the Tejas jet will get the General Electric, Tejas jet will get the General Electric engines by 2032. So they are in that domain. And since even just 2 days national security strategy, or 2 days back the U.S. national security strategy came, the Americans don't trust anymore with India. They believe, and for that matter, in this entire 1 year, there is no visit of high profile American delegate or dignitary or any Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense to India, because they believe it's the relationship is no more that way. And don't forget, the 50% tariff is still on India, and the deal is yet to come, and it's been more than a year almost where such a situation has arisen. So this visit of Russian president to India was just a sort of taking attention from Washington and other Western players that we have multiple options and choices, and we believe in strategic autonomy. And we will exercise that strategic autonomy in case you will pressurize us, or if you bully us or something like that. So I think these are interesting scenarios, and at the same time, they're asking the Russians for $100 billion trade, as you mentioned in the intro. But in reality, this is $68 billion trade, which is heavily tilted towards Russia, and for that matter, they're in fact asking for buying more oil. So they want to expand they want to have more oil, that's what the Western countries don't like. And remember, before President Putin came to India, three European ambassadors of three European countries, they wrote an article criticizing the visit, that it's not an appropriate time. This is, and at the same time, remember, in this entire 70-point joint communique of India Russia, there was no mention of Ukraine. So the Western world doesn't think that this is an appropriate behavior, that India will get everything from us, but in return, it is not going to be an ally of the Western world, because India doesn't believe in being an ally. And for that matter, a Quad is just one example. For many years, they have been working to establish Quad, a platform which will have a security aspect. But so far, India didn't agree to make Quad a security aspect, and that's why the Americans had to come for a concept like AUKUS, where India, US, Australia, US, and UK were there. So this is a major mistrust between the Indians and the Western world. and that we have seen. And frankly speaking, nobody's inviting President Putin in the world. He was isolated, but since Indians have given him a kind of a support to come and uh, to tell the world that look, we have a choice in shape of Putin. But in reality, every Indian youth or every Indian businessman doesn't want to go Moscow. They want to go Washington and Berlin and London more than they want to go, Moscow and St. Petersburg. But still, India is giving a message that we are keeping a friendship with Russia since last 8 decades, and we want to keep it like this in coming months and days. Yes.
Dr. Kamachima, security analyst, thank you very much for taking time out for Unfold. It was really an insightful discussion with you. We look forward to have more in future. We are once again reconnected with Mr. Shahid M.G. KIANI, former ambassador. Mr. KIANI, I hope that you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes.
Mr. KIANI, now when it comes to, you already mentioned when President Putin talked of the uninterrupted supply of oil from Russia to India, there was nothing that was said by Prime Minister Modi. Now, why do you think he didn't say anything in return on that particular front? Is it because of that particular pressure, the punitive tariffs from the United States of America that the US president imposed, alleging India that it was purchasing Russian oil that was actually fueling the Ukraine war?
Yes, absolutely spot on. India knows, 50% tariffs have been imposed on Indian exports, and that is something which does not go well either with the people of India and its own party, BJP. That what kind of a leader is this who has been not been able to do anything to get off from this 50% tariff, and President Trump has made it very clear that that what is fueling the Ukraine war is the Indian purchase of oil from Russia. This is something which is, and today, if you look at the press conference between the two, Prime Minister Modi did not say anything about the oil. And what Russia is doing, let me just share with you that the sanctions on India, on Russian two big oil companies, is that the oil which is being sent to India is through the oil tankers of not Russian oil tanker. This is the Malta and Greece oil tankers which are going there. But nevertheless, the visit, I tell you, of President Putin to Russia is both the leaders needed to get off from the pressure. One, President Putin has not been able to find a solution to the Ukraine war. If you look at 2 days back, the U.S. envoy, Mr. Witkoff, and the son-in-law of President Trump was in Moscow, and they had a long discussion, but nothing came out of it. President Putin remains under pressure from the European countries and from President Trump also, in a manner that to end the war. But naturally speaking, President Trump wants to end the war on his own accord, on his own conditions. And here you talk about Prime Minister Modi, whose own image has been damaged because of what happened with the post Pahalgam, and then what uh, uh, President Trump has been saying about Modi, when he has been denying that President Trump played a very significant role in ending that brief conflict with India. So this is something which Prime Minister Modi cannot stomach. So this is that at least briefly he can get away from the bad news which he's been getting globally and within his own country, that has hosted one of the leaders of a very, very major country. And so this is what has happened. But if you look at the whole the visit, nothing positive came out of it. I didn't see any agreement being signed either the defense or the other parts. Yes, we heard that Russia wants semi professionals and Indians to come to Russia, or they had talked about some defense thing, but no agreements had been signed. Yes, they'll continue to talk, and maybe India is able to get the S-400, another batch as S-400 anti-tank missile. So this is something which they will get. But overall, the visit remains an important visit, no doubt, but nothing tangible came out of these two countries. But remember one thing, These two countries, Russia and India, have been together for the last 7.5 decades, and they will both countries they need each other, and they will be there. But the pressure of the United States on India would remain, because if you look at it, the people of India would like to go more towards the United States than to go to Russia.
So, Mr. KIANI, when it comes to diversifying this particular bilateral relationship, both have also pledged to enhance their trade volume to the tune of $100 billion that already stands at $69 billion. Now, what are those avenues or areas where this particular cooperation could possibly happen beyond the defense cooperation, as well as that cooperation when it comes to energy between the two? The trade surplus between the two, of course, is in the favor of Russia because those oil shipments or India's purchase of oil from Russia.
Prime Minister Modi has said, and President Putin said, they would like to enlarge their trade relationship from to taking to few $billion. And if you look at it, India is a very large manufacturer of, of, of pharmaceuticals and vaccines, and this is what Russia also needs. But in terms of trade, yes, it is in the uh, Russia has advantage in the bilateral trade between the two countries because of the oil. So Modi has said that they would like to double and triple the bilateral trade between the two countries, and let's see how they will do. I do not see in the very near future how will they do it when India is so much dependent on the Russian oil, and that is something. It's a huge chunk in the for the Indian economy. But nevertheless, these two countries need each other. Their leaders need each other. And let's see what happens. But try to understand something very important. Today, the National Security Council, White House has issued a statement, a big report, in which they say that they still need India in trying to, because for them, for the United States, China remains a big challenge and would like to use India to contain China. But to be honest, if you look at the historical record, the India has never been able to contain China. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not in another 100 years. If you look at the conflict they had, recent conflicts in the last 2, 3, 4 years, the Indian got a big beating from the Chinese, and Chinese occupy a large part of their territory in the the northern part, and what has happened with Pakistan, if you recall. So I don't think India poses any challenge to China, but United States and their policymakers will continue to use India in their policy to contain China. This policy not to work, but this is what they have been doing since President Clinton was president.
Mr. KIANI, one last quick question. How should Pakistan be looking at this particular relationship, given at a time you already mentioned of that Pakistan also beat India in that conflict, that confrontation because of India's aggression? We also saw Pakistan's Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, having a meeting with President Putin on the sidelines of the SCO, Council of the Heads of States Summit in September, saying that Pakistan respected Russia's ties with India and wanted to establish very strong relations of its own, which would be supplementary and complementary. Looking at this particular statement, how Pakistan should be actually viewing this particular bilateral relationship, and what was areas where Pakistan can actually expand that particular bilateral relationship of its own with Russia, which is both complementary and supplementary?
The last maybe 1.5 decade, a little more than that, Pakistan-Russia relations have been improving. Rather, they've taken a quantum jump. If you look at the SCO heads of government meeting in Pakistan last year, they sent their prime minister was here. So, and Pakistan does not feel any threat from Russia-India relationship, because Russian leadership are very matured. They understand. And if you look at the the 1 day, 1.5 day meeting which we went there, not a single statement was issued by the Russian president. Neither President Moody's did stated anything against us. we respect bilateral relationship between two countries. Yes, they are there. They are sovereign country. They will have their relationship. It's not against us. And once again, I tell you, President Putin, in this, in his understanding the regional politics, he understands regional foreign policy, what it is. He's been trying to improve relations with Pakistan, and we trust that Russia would decide matters in the interest of Pakistan, India, Pakistan-Russia relationship. So we don't feel threatened. We would like also that we would also develop relations with Russia in in our policy, not against anybody else, but a bilateral relationship of trust and harmony.
Mr. Shahid MD KIANI, former ambassador, joining us through the video link. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of first segment. The second segment, we are going to talk about Australian authorities' move to ban the use of social media applications and platforms for the teens under the age of 16. What are going to be the implications? There's been a little bit of debate regarding this one. Also, is it setting a new precedence for the other countries to follow? The discussion into this particular matter right after a short break. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Unfold. In this particular segment, we are going to talk about that deadline which is approaching for the social media giants by the Australian authorities, which have implemented a ban for the use of social media applications and platforms for the teens under the age of 16. It has created a debate globally whether it is actually aimed at curbing the online harms, also protecting the vulnerable teens, but there is also criticism to it. The critics say that it is going to result into unintended consequences and also going to lead into privacy violations. Also, it is going to threaten the freedom of speech. There has been a pushback by the tech giants, also including YouTube and Meta as well, but Meta says that it has started blocking the users under age of 16 on its multiple platforms. Now, is this going to be a turn in the global digital regulation, or is it going to be an overreach in the name of safety? To understand all this, we are honored to be joined through the video link by HASAN IFTIKHAR. He's a senior journalist and also an analyst. HASAN, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. What is this ban all about? What are the reasons which have been cited by the Australian authorities? Why are they trying to implement this particular ban? What has been the trigger point?
Thank you for inviting me, Jawad. It's a very important topic. Because the problem you see is that in Australia, about 96% of the kids aged 10 to 15 are using social media. And as per a recent survey there, out of those were 96%, 7 out of 10, basically 70% of those have been either, they have been either abused online or they've been allowed to watch violent stuff or something of that sort. So the problem is with the Australians that they now think that it is the responsibility of the providers like Facebook or the other social media platforms to ensure that such kind of material does not, reach the children. The problem with these big giant corporations is that they want access to information about these kids, their preferences, their user choices at an earlier age, because they can sell these data sets to different companies, different other multinationals that can then sell their own stuff to them. In Australia, they've been very clear about this. These big tech companies have tried to stop this. They've tried to block this. They've not been able to do that. And the fines are significant. They're up to 50 million Australian dollars will be fined on each platform for each infringement of this. The problem with whatever these platforms are saying is that they cannot be the guardians of gatekeeping. The job of gatekeeping, the age cannot be theirs. But the problem is, if you actually when you sign up for any of these platforms, they explicitly ask you if you are above 18 or not, and then you have to lie on those things to make these accounts and everything. So in a way, these platforms were breaching the contracts that they were signed. These contracts that the kids sign, that everybody you sign when you sign up for something, you sign that contract kind of a thing at the end that tells you that whatever this is. In that, you were supposed to tell that you were 18 and not less than that. Uh, Studies have shown that social media addiction is as bad as any other addiction.
Done
It
when
is.
there is a question asked in written when it comes to the age verification. Are there any tools, for example, when it comes to voice recognition and face recognition, are there any other tools which could be of use when it comes to the age verification?
Look, what the Australian government is asking them to do is to do it through either documentation, licensing, or through selfies and other things. What these platforms have been saying all along is that it should not be their responsibility, but instead the Play Store or the App Stores or whatever stores kids use to download Android apps, those stores should not let them download these apps unless they are 16. So they want the responsibility to go onto the apps and the app development companies and the mobile manufacturers and those kind of things. But what the government is very clearly
That
saying
is
is
the argument of these social media tech giants when it comes to, they say that servers like Google and Apple, the app stores should be actually cognizant of this fact. Actually, the measures need to be brought in by them. It's their responsibility rather than the responsibility of these platforms, the Meta and the YouTube, which you already referred to. Also, when we talk about, even if Apple and Google do this particular, take this particular measure, and there are certain other tools other than the written documentation, if the voice recognition tools or face recognition tools or other similar sort of technologies are used in this particular regard, don't you think another question will rise about the data protection of the users?
Look, Jawad, it's sort of uncharted territory. We are getting into a stage and where artificial intelligence can probably do a lot of other things that normal verification tools have not been able to do. But the problem in this is that there are about 150,000 kids who are using Facebook, and then there are 350,000 kids who are using Instagram. Now, these kids and these people who are underage, and there's no real mechanism to ensure that they are not being exposed to vulgarity, they are not being exposed to violence, they are not being exposed to other stuff. Other than that, the fact is also this, that these multinational, the big corporations like Meta and stuff will not want these people to go away from them. They will fight this tooth and nail because they have these data sets on every user and everyone. So these are prospective buyers for stuff that these media companies can sell advertisement to, or other things. So that's the reason that they've been fighting this tooth and nail. Australia has been very strict. If this goes through, then the next problem would be in America or UK and other places as well, because 95% of parents who were polled in Australia wanted their children to stay away from this. And studies have shown that these things, these addictions are like not good for kids under this age. Their minds are not developed as such to take these things in.
So is there a middle way out? Is there a middle way out? When we talk about, do you think this particular blanket ban actually also threaten the very freedom of speech? Or when we talk about a certain age group, this particular phenomenon of freedom of speech is not supposed to be considered at all when we talk about children under, or the teens under age of 16? Or is there a middle way out? And why is it necessary? If you already mentioned, is it just because of the business model or the profitability of such social media giants that they would want such type of, or the people from across the all ages to be the part of that very ecosystem?
Look, no, you pointed out yourself, you've hit the nail yourself. There's an age of consent for everything. And the concept is that the age of consent for stuff that is harmful to you, that can be stopped. Parents can actually stop that stuff from getting to you. And then there is no freedom of expression. There is no freedom of speech. None of your rights are violated because that stuff is not age appropriate. So that principle applies to this as well. The multinationals will lose a big chunk of that. As I said, that as per a research, 96% of 10 to 15-year-olds in Australia are using social media. So that's a very big segment. But as like other addictions, most of these companies, what they try to do is they try to get these people young. I mean, cigarettes were sold to youngsters, and then they had to come up with that under 18, and they had to stop that because it was damaging their health and stuff. Similarly, you cannot sell alcohol to under 18-year-olds. You cannot sell other stuff. So there should not be a sort of a blanket, immunity just because you say that the web is a free space, that the ideas or have to be exchanged and everything of that sort. So what they are doing is, in Australia, they're saying that, look, there's a certain age. After that, you can explore any ideas you want. But before that, because your brains are not developed enough, it is not appropriate for you to actually gain access to these things. And then they're telling these platforms that, look, because you are doing it, it is your responsibility to stop it. Big multinationals don't want to take responsibility for anything. They just want to make money off people or money of these things. But they have been pushed into this. Australian case has been going on for a while. This is not just out of the blue that they have come up with this. There has been a lot of to and fro between the big corps and the Australian government. And I think this is the least dangerous or the least harmful, for instance, for multinationals approach that the Australians have come in. Obviously, there will be teething problems, there will be issues, there will be for another couple of months the responsibility, where it lies, how things will sort out. But I think in the largest things, this is a very good thing. This should be done across the world. Some things, some stuff is not appropriate for you at a certain age. If you were to find out about some things at 11, probably, your mental ability to comprehend them is not such.
Hasan, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. Why then this Sydney-based internet group, Digital Freedom Project, has challenged it in the court?
Yes, there will be more challenges as well. There are a couple of, there are like 8 or 9 companies that have been named that are supposed to follow these laws. But the Australian government has also asked others to implement this on themselves voluntarily. Some of them have actually agreed. Some of them have said that it does not apply to us. So obviously there will be a lot of legal to and fro between this. But I think, look, the basic concept is this, that if you stop children from other harmful stuff, this is also harmful. And there are studies that prove that this is harmful behavior. That just the addiction, if we just take out the violence part, we just take out the vulgarity part, we just take everything out, just the fact that you are going onto these platforms and you're constantly checking them, your phone, and checking for updates and stuff like that, that's like an addiction. And it has been proved that these addictions give you the same amount of dopamine hits that other addictions give you. So that's where the Australian government is on very strong footing. And that's where they're saying this, that you cannot do this because it is harmful to their health as well, in the larger sense, whether it's the mental health or the physical health, but it is that. So I don't see that all of these, I mean, you can challenge a lot of things, you can challenge a lot of laws, but it's not really going to work out in this case.
Mm-hmm. So are there going to be some alternative means when it comes to creating fake IDs? There are certain media outlets which have spoken to the teens over there in Australia, and they've said that they are going to use the fake ID alternative, or there is going to be a rapid increase into the use of VPNs in that particular regard when this particular law is being implemented.
Look, it can happen. People use fake IDs to go to pubs and bars and stuff. People use fake IDs to buy cigarettes in the West. People do a lot of things. If you make a law, people will try to find out ways to bypass it. But that does not mean that you should not make good laws, because people will break it, will try to break them, or will try to do some illegal stuff to bypass them. VPNs, obviously, yes. But I think if it becomes a major concern for the Australian government, what is stopping the Australian government from ensuring that those VPNs do not operate in their country? Once the Australian government is able to establish this, for instance, if somebody is challenged it and they are once able to establish it in the court of law, that this indeed is something that is helpful for the children, or the generation, whichever generation is coming, then I don't see anything that is tried to work out. Obviously, yes, there cannot be a sort of you cannot stop every little kid from going on social media. Somebody will buy a fake ID, somebody will use a VPN. But what they will do is they will ensure that this is not the norm. I mean, if people from 10 to 15, 96% of them are on social media.
We are pressed with time. One quick last question. Is this setting a new precedence for the other countries to follow also?
I think it is. I think it is. It will be for parents, at least in the European sphere of the world, the European Union or other or similar countries will probably look at these laws because there the governments are in a position where they can actually ask these companies to do this. I don't know about the United States of America because tech companies really have a lot of sway there, and Elon Musk and all these big wigs are really close to the current American establishment as well. So I don't see this working out there. But yes, in the European Union and in Britain, countries like that, yes, we might see this taking place in the coming future.
What is applicable in our case, in case of Pakistan? Quick question, answer to that.
We already have these things in place. For instance, in Pakistan, we have these. You cannot watch pornography on Pakistani internet. So that is the thing now, because we said that we cannot let our entire country watch this because this is a moral problem. Similarly, Pakistan has been censoring a lot of other stuff which they can, because under Pakistani laws, it is illegal to, have access to pornographic stuff or something of that sort. So it depends also on local laws. If a Pakistani law is there, then some of these organizations will have to listen to them, at least in cases where there are very clear violations or flagrant violations. In others, they would probably ignore Pakistani advice. It will probably depend. But if Pakistan is to say that we are not going to let under 16-year-olds register on these platforms, then these platforms would probably have to listen to the Pakistani government.
You're answering yes or no. Is education the solution? If you allow all the teenagers to have the access to social media platforms, is education or creating awareness among them right at the outset during their school days or in their formative years, is that a solution, or are you up for, or are you in favor of a complete blanket ban until a certain age?
I am in favor of a complete blanket ban. Generations before us and
I get your point.
We've done all done pretty well without social media being there. Developed minds after 16 probably would be a better place for these things to start, not before then.
Journalists and analysts joining us through the video link, thank you very much for being with us on Unfold tonight. It was really a interesting discussion. Looking forward to have more. With that, we come to the end of today's episode of Unfold. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.